Don Burnell, I'm the President of the Association of Washington Business. A.W.B, as it's commonly referred to, is the state's Chamber of Commerce, and we're a state manufacturing association. We have 7,600 members across our state, ranging from very large companies to very small companies. About 90% of our members employ fewer than 25 workers, and about 40% employ fewer than 10. So we're a very, very diverse organization. We have 180 people on our board, and every year we have a policy summit, and that's to bring people together to try and solve problems. And this year we're at Suncadia. We were here 2 years ago, and we're here because this is a place that's off-site where people can focus on this discussions and trying to solve problems. So you have about 300 people here that'll be here, today and tomorrow. And we've had a number of speakers from across the country that have been here. There's the guy that opened it this morning was a demographer from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. His name is Dr. Jeffrey Rosenzweig. The reason we had him up here is that if you look down the road 10 years from now, U.S. is very well positioned to grow with employees because of the demographics. In China, there's a one-child policy that's catching up with them, so they're not going to have the workers available. And the same thing is happening in Europe, but the United States is posed very well. One of the other things that happened when we brought him up here is the fact that the Washington state is the #1 trade state per capita. You have companies like Boeing and Starbucks and Costco and Microsoft all need skilled workers, and part of what we're trying to do is to develop policies that will improve, create jobs, let's put it that way. And we needed both the small and the large businesses to create those jobs. So this is what it's about tonight. The closing speaker is Scott Rasmussen, who runs the Rasmussen surveys. He was also, incidentally, the founder of ESPN. So it's a good meeting and a good mix of folks. And again, it's designed to solve problems. And one of the key problems we have this day is trying to find financing for small, medium-sized business. So we're working on that.
I saw that Forbes named Washington as the second best state to start a business in. Do you know why that is?
Sure.
Why it's so good for businesses?
There's a lot of different surveys we look, but it's pretty consistent. Washington State is a good place to start a business, primarily because you've got a lot of entrepreneurs there. Okay. The problem is making sure that the state can sustain those small businesses. We also have a high rate of small business failures, and the reason is because costs tend to be a little high here. So you have a lot of venture capital, you have a lot of spin-offs from Microsoft, a lot of spin-offs from Boeing. But lots of times those companies don't sustain themselves because you get into a down economy like we are today. Those are the contractors that are usually outwork. So one of our goals is to make sure those small businesses have staying power. But a part of it is, as well as the fact that in Washington, we don't have a corporate income tax. And lots of small businesses are exempt from paying the state's B&O tax, which is a gross tax on their income. So all those combined, when they start up, are pretty good incentives. The key is to keep them going, so you need trained workers. You need making sure you've got products to market, and you also make sure that the other companies that are in contract with them are doing well as well. So that was part of what this conference is about, is bringing people in and say, we're looking down 5 years. What is it going to be like that will create the sustainable growth and keep those businesses going? Because like our organization, 90% of our folks are small businesses. So we're very much interested in having those folks grow, because that's the real growth. That's, Microsoft started 3 years ago with Bill Gates, and, it's a very, very small company. Now look at it today. Boeing started in 1911 with Bill Boeing coming out of graduate school. It's a very small company making float planes for the Navy. So you watch those things grow, but that's where we don't know what the next startup business is going to be. So our hope is that we can find some of those folks among our members, so they have the opportunity to grow.
You said 90% of your members are small businesses.
Right.
What effect do you think the 12% raise in minimum wage is going to have on that?
Well, you have to look at the type of business. When you have an increase in minimum wage, it tends to affect restaurants and farm workers mostly. So, two answers to that. Number one, those industries that are struggling, it has an impact, particularly on restaurants right now. In terms of the overall, if it raises the cost of doing business, it has an impact down the road on some of the other companies. But by and large, most of the companies in our state pay above minimum wage. But there are portions of the state where a minimum wage job is a pretty good job, particularly in rural areas. So you ask the impact, it's going to be mixed. And I think what's really critical is to see how they calculated the raise in the minimum wage, because I noticed Oregon did the same thing. Oregon raised its minimum wage, and Washington's going to raise its minimum wage. They adjust it every year. So, again, on some industries, it'll have an impact. On others, it'll be a distant impact because it will raise the cost down the road.
Notice there's protesters this year. Is that common, or is this a first?
We haven't had protesters. We've had protesters at our office. We've had protesters, of course, here. And that's not very common, but it's a sign of the times, because you see a lot of protesters in Seattle, and you've had protests for longshoremen down in Longview, Kelso. And I think what it is anytime you have very uncertain times, like we have right now, uncertainty is really the driving factor. Nobody knows where the economy is going. Nobody has confidence that the economy is going to rebound. Anytime you have those uncertain times, it generates folks who are concerned about it. So a lot of the folks that are here today, we share some of their same concerns. I think that we would differ in the fact that they are targeting some things like Wall Street and some larger banks, and even the governor. The governor's got a very tough job to do in this state, because revenues continue to slide, yet you've got a lot of services that need to occur. So what's happened is that they don't have the money to fund all those. So she's got a very, very tough job. And anytime you have to, it's human nature. When you're giving somebody something, everybody's happy. When you're taking it away, nobody's happy. So what's happened in the last couple of years is they've had to reduce budgets in the state. And if you look at how the money in the state is spent, it's on education, it's on prisons, it's on health care, and it's on different types of programs for needy people. When you have those, those are the places you have to go to make cuts. The same thing's happened at the federal level. The uncertainty there created over the debt limit debates in June. It caused a lot of people some concern because they weren't sure what direction they were going. I think in Washington we've been much better off because the governor has been more definitive in saying, here's where we have to go. None of these choices are good, and we agree. They're bad choices, but they have to be made, because right now there's not a climate to raise revenues or to increase taxes or fees. And it permeates down to local government as well. So, the local governments are also struggling to make ends meet, because anytime you have reduced business activity, in other words, is consumer spending or whatever, you're going to have reduced revenues that are coming in for local government and the state. So what we're trying to do here is reverse that cycle. So you generate, if business activity picks up, taxes are going to pick up, therefore you're going to be able to fund your schools better, fund welfare programs, and fund the essential services of state and local government. So that's the attempt here. I don't know if I answered your question, but we've seen this nationwide. It's starting to happen. It's primarily because people are, there are difficult choices, and people are always concerned about, what's going to happen to their program, and that's understandable. And I understand, because we look at the same thing. But at the end of the day, there's some very difficult times ahead. The money coming into the state is still shrinking. What we have to do is to turn that around so it's increasing. So when you have enough revenue, then a lot of these issues go away. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's what we're looking at.